Howdy ho, Maplers, and welcome to Angelic Buster, the channel icon. As well, one of our fastest 250s, tying 0 at 13 days to hit 250. She was definitely an expedient one. Our fourth pirate, and probably the easiest pirate right up there behind Mechanic. The XP rates are beyond absurd. With one-shotting Soul Seekers, this class kinda surprised me on how quick it actually levels, thanks to all the bonus EXP from the event. I was getting some pretty gnarly rates on AB, and she was pretty darn fun to boot. For the gear, all the same stuff as usual. Meso obtain accessories, nothing too outlandishly strong, an okay cup, placeholder belt, a sort of okay weapon, since the emblem and the secondary for AB are going to be doing more than their fair share of weight pulling, considering they are a little bit above average for my 250s. As well, this is one of my few characters with an actual Ghost Ship Exorcist badge, so a nice little bit of bonus stat, as well as an old fairy heart that was chilling on this character, which is why I'm not using a Wonderoid. And for AB's inner ability, ideally you want to have this +1 attack speed line as your first prime line, but I would recommend first rolling for your second line of 20% crit, because oh lord, AB has some unbelievably low crit rate. Like, it is very, very hard to work around. I'm talking Phantom Link, BT Link, and your Explorer Archer Link, unless you want to be shifting around your entire Legion grid to get this thing to 100% crit rate. It's pretty abysmal. But for the V Matrix, as always, in its very first spot, Decent Holy Symbol. Bonus EXP, bonus drop rate, it's just the best skill you could possibly wish for from the V Matrix. Now you might be thinking, what's the second best skill you could possibly wish for? How about Holy Symbol 2? Loaded dice. Just a guaranteed additional EXP buff that stacks on top of everything. That just makes all pirate classes that much better at farming than literally everyone else. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Easy second slot, even at level 1. And for Angelic Buster, now I've listed all of these out in like order of importance, at least how they felt for me, so I'll just kind of do them in that order. Your most important starting set is going to be your boost nodes. Especially if you're looking to have one-shotting Soul Seekers, which is the most efficient way of training, as well as the fastest and best EXP rate, you're gonna need Soul Seekers enhanced as soon as possible. So your first trio ideally is Celestial Roar, Soul Seeker, and Trinity Fusion. That's your mobbing skill, your bossing skill, and supplementary damage, and potentially your main mobbing skill. Your other trio way down here, something you don't need to put on until way later because it's really only supplementary, is going to be Supreme Supernova, Soul Resonance, and Finale Ribbon. The Supreme Supernova of these three is the one you'll probably be using the most, but its base damage when unboosted is high enough that it never really felt that bad to not have the boost node on, which is why it's so low on the list here. But as I said, Soul Seekers are pretty much your weakest ability while also having the potential to be your best mobbing ability. These things are absolutely crazy while they're one-shotting. They've pretty much made AB mechanic tier in terms of EXP rates. But the caveat being, these things are sort of low damage. Think of it like an in-between between Nightlord Marks and Nightwalker Bats. They're very weak, but not so weak that they're impossible to obtain early on. You definitely want to have these bad boys boosted. And then for the fourth job skills for AB, your most important one, Superstar Spotlight. This thing is like a pseudo burst ability, but the primary use we have for it on leveling to 250 is its absolutely insane mobbing potential. Each one of these spotlights has its own mob count to it, which means just flash jumping through a map, even on Frenzied Spawn for like some of the most populated maps in the game like Outlaw Street 2, this will be able to full clear by itself while it's up. So effectively, this is just the greatest looting button in the universe, because You don't need to worry about actively mobbing while this thing is up. It's going to just clear the map passively, and you can just run around and loot all the items in the map. It's super duper nice. And for bossing, it's actually pretty darn good. For every spotlight that you're standing within, you get a stacking buff, and final damage is obviously a part of that buff, and final damage is pretty wild late game. It's really, really nice. As well as giving a good healthy amount of status resist, pretty darn good. Then the second most important skill, and it's more so for bursting elites than it is for mobbing, but it can be used for mobbing, Trinity Fusion. Now I have problems with this skill, but the long short of this, it's just a buffed up version of Trinity. It works sort of like the mana circle 4th V for Evan, where you hold down and then press your Trinity button, and it'll set up the attack. It really doesn't last that long. I thought for the longest time I was just using the skill wrong because it's a blink and you miss it kind of thing. It lasts for less than a second and it just dumps its whole load of damage and just spews out a bunch of soul seekers, which is really, really nice, but it's visually kind of lackluster. It doesn't have very good staying power, so it's not that great for mobbing. The hitbox on it is really good, and the fact that it can spawn a lot of soul seekers is also pretty good for mobbing, but realistically, I can see it being more useful if you're in an area where soul seekers aren't one-shotting and where you're relying more heavily on Celestial Roar, Supreme Supernova, and your spotlights for mobbing. But for my general training, this really was only used to burst elites, and oh boy, does it burst elites. Because it spawns so many soul seekers, it's pretty much the greatest start off to bursting that you could possibly wish for, because it sets you up with nearly max soul seekers, and then you could just start spamming Trinity to keep your damage going. Really, really nice at that. And speaking of bursting elites, you've got Mighty Mascot, the quote-unquote burst skill for AB. I also have problems with this skill. We're kind of having a theme here for AB's V skills. It does a lot of damage, alright? The way this thing works, the more that you attack after pressing the skill once, a little counter will start building up on the skill itself, which will count up to a maximum of 8. Ideally, you want to get it to that 8 before you repress the skill again, or before this buff expires, so that you get the most amount of damage lines out of the Mighty Mascot. Now, the reason I have a problem with this skill is it stacks up really, really slow. Like, so slow in fact. I had problems timing this out with my terms and conditions buff. Like, I needed to wait until I had pretty much 4 stacks on this little dude before I popped terms of conditions, or else I would lose that buff before this guy finished stacking. But ideally, you want to set all of your buffs up before you go into a big burst. That means you have to pre-prepare Mighty Mascot in order to set up your burst, so that you're not losing any buffs mid-burst, which feels bad. Because, let's say for Dojo specifically, if you get into a stage that you want to burst, you just need to have already pre-prepared Mighty Mascot on the stage before you pre-burst, and then it gets awkward, because if it's a boss that teleports around, you can miss out on a lot of damage because this guy has a little bit of a delay before he turns, and losing out on those hits is pretty big because this guy is a load of your burst. Like, when he's fully stacked up, he's over half of your burst damage, so having him miss those crucial attacks feels really bad. As well, if you start charging it when you get to the stage, he takes literally forever to charge up. It's worse than pre-change Xenon charge up, where you just had to hold down Omega Blaster for like 30 seconds. It's on that level, and just a level more of awkwardness, because you have to be actively fighting the boss to build up stacks for this dude. It's not like Omega Blaster, where you just start chaining Omega Blaster and then just start using your other buffs. Now you have to use this guy before everything else, and then use everything else while you're charging him up. I don't like how it works. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. It's just awkward to work around. As well, his little turn delay makes it super awkward for bosses in Dojo that have like heavy teleports. Looking at you, Ravana. So he can be hit or miss. For mobbing, he's absolutely useless. You don't need him for mobbing. For bursting elites, again, he has a charge up time that's significant to the point that he's really not useful for bursting elites. So he's kind of in an awkward spot where I'd say really just throw him on when you're doing dojo, otherwise keep him off. And then again, after Mighty Mascot, then you would ideally want to throw on your second set of boost nodes because you'll be getting up to those higher level areas. Maybe you're going to need the extra Soul Resonance damage or Supreme Supernova damage. Finale Ribbon is really only on there because you're going to be using it all the time for bossing to maintain its final damage buff, or debuff rather, to enemies. It's not really there for the damage, although it can be used for mobbing. It's not great at mobbing, it has a very long cooldown, even with cooldown cutter. So, that's when you would want to throw those on. And then, of course, True Arachnid Reflection. You get it for completing the Will storyline. Decent mobbing, decent bossing. Throw it on when you get it. And of course, since you're a pirate, you have access to Overdrive. Probably one of the better feeling class-specific B-Matrix buffs. It's really nice in that it has a low cooldown and a decent uptime. The only drawback is you do lose a little bit of your weapon attack on your base weapon attack on your stats when it's on cooldown. So if you're using it to get that little extra oomph for, let's say, Dream Defender, it does have a little bit of a drawback when it's on cooldown, but it's not so much of a drawback that you wouldn't want to be using it on cooldown. It's a great skill, pretty much the best thing you got to just throw on to burst elites. So if you need the extra damage, Overdrive's your best bet. Probably even better than Mighty Mascot, honestly. Just throw Overdrive on to pop elites if you're struggling to kill them quickly. And then of course, decent Sharp Eyes, decent Speed Infusion. As I said before, you need all the sources of crit you can get on Angelic Buster. Your base crit rate is so abysmally low. Every little bit helps. So you always want the decent Sharp Eyes, not only for the crit damage, but in this case, especially for that crit rate. And, of course, decent Speed Infusion. Angelic Burster, I don't believe, can hit hard attack speed cap at attack speed 0. I could be wrong on that, but if I remember right, they get hard locked at like attack speed 1, even with Green Pot, so you want to have the decent Speed Infusion, even if you're not using Green Pot. Super duper handy. And then, of course, character building one. It's just the best in slot EXP node, at least for Reg server and Reboot, because we have spawn boosters. This thing just triggers way more often than the rune buff. It's just the best one you got. And then their final V skill, Sparkle Burst. I really don't know where to use this other than hard bossing. It's good damage, it really is. But it's kind of like Mighty Mascot, but a little bit easier. It has a setup where you have to charge it up before it does full damage, and the more that you charge it, the more damage it does. As well, this is your main iframe. The charge also works on the length of the invincibility from the iframe. It's a really, really, really good iframe. Up to 10 full seconds of invulnerability is really good on an iframe. However, it is completely useless for mobbing. And it is almost less impactful than Overdrive for bursting elites because of its charge up time. By the time it's fully charged, unless you're really lacking for damage, the elite's already gonna die soon anyways. So you might as well have just used Overdrive to kickstart your Trinity Fusion and Soul Seekers, but if you need that little extra oomph, you can throw it on. For me, this skill really just didn't have a use outside of Dojo or Dream Defender, where you could set it up on a floor and then charge it while clearing other floors. There it's pretty handy, but I almost found no use for it while mobbing, and it was kind of inconsistently good for Dojo. It's nice to have, but since I don't do any real hard bossing, I don't have a need for a 10-second iframe, so it was just the one that's being left by the wayside. And if you're looking down on my extra skills down there, you might be wondering why I have Rope Lift on a class that has a 0 cooldown Rope Lift innately. The main reason is the higher level you get beyond 250, the more node slots you unlock. The more node slots you unlock, the less useful skills you have on, so then you want to be defaulting to the ones that give the best passive stats, and Rope Lift gives passive all stats, which is really good. late game. So I wouldn't recommend throwing away all of your rope lift nodes unless you're very early on and you're struggling to get your core skills for your V Matrix. Hang on to those rope lifts. In the long run, they will pay off. Even if you're not using the skill itself, the passive all stats will help out. Oh boy. Angelic Buster, huh? I kind of wanted to see how fast I could level a character on the new curve, but I did not want to go nearly as hard as I did for my Zero way back when. And to be honest, I don't really even feel like I went that hard on Angelic Buster. It's more so that with the event stacks and with how good Soul Seekers are for stacking combo, AB was just naturally accelerated as the 250. For the training, it's very, very simple. 200 until 205. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You've got Below the Cave or Eastern Cave Path. I generally go to Eastern Cave Path since it's less popular. And honestly, AB is an amazing class when it comes to mobbing. Even when you're unfunded, she's a good mobber because of the huge range on Celestial Roar. And then the more funding you get, you can transition over to Soul Seeker farming if you're strong enough, and she becomes one of the best combo stackers in the game, up there rivaling Mechanic in terms of how much combo you can stack. To put it into reference, when I was in Latchlet on this character, I stacked up to 10k combo kills in 22 minutes. So let's just say, when you're training with Soul Seekers, you absolutely want to have your Ron link on because it is invaluable to your EXP rates. It's insane. So yeah, you just flash jump through using either Celestial Roar or Soul Seekers, whichever one-shots for you. Similar to Night Lord, if your Soul Seekers aren't one-shotting, ideally you want to stay where your Soul Seekers are two-shotting, but if you're so underfunded that they're not actually benefiting your mobbing all that much, just stay wherever it's comfortable for you to farm with Celestial Roar, Supreme Supernova, Soul Resonance, and your Spotlights. She's still an amazing farmer if she doesn't have Soul Seekers one-shotting, but when you have those one-shotting Soul Seekers, AB turns into a very, very good mobber and a very, very lazy mobber. And for 205 until 215, of course, it's the Hidden Research Train, one of the best maps in the game, and it's in Reverse City, so it's got an amazing BGM to boot. If you're on reg servers, go ahead and drop your Lucid Soul on the side. If not, just cycle Supreme Supernova. And again, if you're strong enough that your Soul Seekers are one-shotting, just keep hopping around, chucking Soul Seekers. The Soul Seekers are kind of like the reverse of Luminous's Reflection. They like to bounce upward a lot more than they like to bounce down, so ideally when you're using them you want to stay on the bottom of the map so that they have more room to go up to clear mobs. It just feels better. If there's too much of a gap between you and the mobs below you, Soul Seekers are very, very rarely going to go down there unless they're forced to by like other Soul Seekers killing their targets, and then the orb just gets barely within range of a mob below it, then it'll get down to it, but it's like pulling teeth getting these things to go down too far. So if you are one-shotting with your Soul Seekers, stick to the bottoms of maps. It'll just end up feeling and being better for your EXP rates. And honestly, AB starts off strong and she just keeps getting better with these EXP rates. She was rocking like 80 bill per hour in Rev 3, which is on the high end for getting through into 215. Like, it's very on the high end. Obviously, a little bit of that was due to the Slime Island event, but hey, AB, even without those bonus buffs, would have still been one of my fastest 250s. She's pretty wild all around. And then for 215 until 220, you have, of course, the Hidden Iliad field. This is where, if you have one-shotting Soul Seekers, you can really start to get into some degenerate training methods with Angelic Buster. As well, when you're training, always make sure your dice is locked at 6, bonus EXP. You never want to miss out on that. And this is where the degeneracy starts. In Hidden Iliad field, you can just stand here in the middle and just keep on spamming your Soul Seekers and watch that combo counter rise. It's super, super, super fast at stacking combo. So ideally, you just want to make your rounds for looting the map when you have at least 9 combo orbs on the map, because if you let it go beyond 10, they're going to start expiring before you get around to pick them up. So generally, just if you see 9 combo orbs, do a loot cycle. Even if it's before your natural loot cycle for mesos and drops or whatnot, you want to be getting all these combo orbs. Doing some EXP rate tests, my combo orbs were making up 8%, up to 9% of my EXP per level, which is absurd how much you get out of a run link on this class, but you always want to be making sure if you have your run link on, and again I would highly recommend to have your run link on if you're training with Soul Seekers, to absolutely be picking up those combo orbs. They don't seem like much individually, but the amount of them that you're going to be spawning over the course of your training hours is well worth the minor amount of effort to pick them up. And a surprise new addition to our 250 training areas. Outlaw Street 2 for 220 until 235. And I'm not even kidding. If your Soul Seekers are one-shotting in Outlaw Street 2, you pretty much want to be staying here until 235, because if your Soul Seekers are one-shotting here, there really isn't a better map in Arcana until CLP. So if you have it, drop your Lucid Soul on the side. If not, just cycle your Supreme Supernova on the right side, and then you just start hucking Soul Seekers. Now, if your Soul Seekers aren't one-shotting, I would still highly recommend this map because you can get about the same EXP per hour just using your Celestial Roar to clear out the mobs. The only thing you'll be missing out on using this as your main mobbing skill is combo stacking. And since Soul Seekers stack combos so much, that little bit of EXP per combo orb adds up to make it just that much better for your EXP rate. And oh boy, AB was pushing about 125 bill EXP per hour in this map. Like, this is not a map that most classes can clear on Kishin spawn, let alone on Frenzied spawn. About the only class that has the consistent summon uptime to clear this is Kana. So it goes to show how good of a mobbing skill Soul Seekers can be when they're fully one-shotting. The only downside to this map is this right side. If your Lucid Soul isn't one-shotting, and while I was here mine definitely wasn't, you're gonna be missing out on a lot of mobs kills there, but while you have your Supreme Supernova up for 15 seconds, you're effectively full clearing that side. And then of course, if you ever just need to loot the map, you chuck out your spotlights and they will full clear everything while you just get around the map to pick up items. This map is absurd. When a class can actually clear this map, it really goes to show why it was the best Kana Meso farming area for the longest time. It is absolutely loaded with mobs. There's so many so that most classes just can't even clear them before they start respawning on frenzied spawn speeds. So that is like, if your Soul Seekers are one-shotting, I wouldn't recommend moving anywhere else until 235. Even once you're out of the bonus EXP range, that map is still going to be putting up your best numbers for one-shotting Soul Seekers. And it's just really nice. It's not a super popular map, especially in reg servers, so it's pretty much always 100% burning. Big plus, don't have to get Firestarter service. And it just feels really good getting 120 bill EXP per hour pre-Arcana. Like, obscenely good. However, if your Soul Seekers aren't one-shotting, and if you feel like Outlaw Street 2 is lacking, at 230 I would recommend transitioning over to Earth Spirits. This map is very, very good for your Celestial Roar because you can pretty much double plat most of these little things throughout the map. If you have your Lucid Soul, set her in the middle. If not, don't worry, she's not that vitally important. Most of your mobbing is going to be coming from Celestial Roar, and then any of your Soul Seekers that you get passively from Soul Seeker Expert are what is going to be clearing the top middle. Lucid is more of a mascot than a useful mobbing summon for Angelic Buster, because, well, she ain't a mage. She doesn't have the damage formula on her side to get those amazing soul damage. But this is a very good map, and it is a very relaxing map for Angelic Buster. Celestial Roar has an absurdly good hitbox, as well as AB's powerful flash jump. You get through this map very, very quickly, even without making use of the double flash jump. It's super good, very chill. Just space out and flash jump your way through on into 235. And then at 235, Are you ready for some more degenerate training? I sure hope so, because I was. 235 until 250. If your Soul Seekers are one-shotting, you can train in CLP. It's obviously not the best, but oh boy, for Angelic Buster is this lazy. And since you're stacking up combos so quickly, it's making up for the lack of natural EXP this map gets in the combo orbs. Like, any class besides Angelic Buster clearing this map is usually around 95 to 100 bill per hour. Angelic Buster, being a pirate, having loaded dice, and as well stacking up Aron's Link, far better than most classes in the game, she was still pushing about 125 bill EXP per hour, well outside of the bonus EXP range. Now, obviously CLP isn't the greatest area in the universe, but when I'm getting 125 bill per hour with a training method that is on par with Pathfinder levels of effort, you can bet I'll be training in CLP. But of course, LP1 is still a very good option if your Soul Seekers aren't one-shotting. If you have a Lucid Soul, just drop her on one of the sides, and then you just want to be flash jumping through using Celestial Roar. Again, this skill has such an amazing hitbox to it that it's going to be double platting off of your flash jump alone. And then if you have Supreme Supernova off cooldown, just drop it on one of the sides. It is a little bit awkward to place. I still don't know exactly why it doesn't place directly above your character head. Sometimes it feels like it's getting pushed over because of the corners of the map. Other times it feels like it's just delayed on its cast, but you'll get used to it the more that you use it. And then you just flash jump back and forth. And this map will be pushing out about the same EXP rates as CLP with Soul Seekers, but you don't have to rely on Soul Seekers to get the rates here. It's a little bit more effort since you're flash jumping left and right, but it's pretty much full clearing. And then if you have spotlights on cooldown, all you have to do is flash jump, because your spotlights will more than clear this map on their own. EXP rates should be around the 115 to 120 bill EXP rate while you're within the bonus EXP range, which is insane for the amount of effort this class requires. And for the amount of funding it requires. Honestly, AB is probably the cheapest barrier to entry class when it comes to good EXP rates. It's very, very nice. But I wouldn't recommend staying there until 250. I would say stay there until 245, then you're completely out of the bonus EXP range for those mobs. Then I would recommend transitioning over into Cellus. And for Cellus, it's PD1 time. Remember Earth Spirits? This is pretty much just an improved version of Earth Spirits. You have a Lucid Soul, drop her up top, drop your Will skill on top on cooldown, and then you're just at the bottom here. You just flash jump your little booty left and right, using Celestial Roar to clear this. You'll occasionally get Soul Seekers to passively spawn, and they might bounce their way up to the top. It's a little bit tricky because there is a pretty sizable gap between the middle to the top, but they do work their way up there quite consistently. And this is very good EXP rates for the amount of effort. For Cellus, this will be pushing about 115 to 125 bill per hour. And since they're PD1 mobs, you get into that bonus EXP range at 246 instead of 247 for like PD4 or whatnot. So you're going to be getting more bonus EXP earlier to push you on into 250. And it's just a nice transitionary map to get you out of Arcana and into Cellus. A nice, easy breezy glide on into 250. And oh man, I don't think any other class would have been this easy to like match my zero's leveling rate, because back when I was leveling my zero, it was pre the Black Mage event, so a lot of the EXP curve adjustments just hadn't happened yet. So to get my 0 to 250 in 13 days took me 13 days straight of 12 to 14 hour days grinding non-stop the entire way to get a 250 in under 2 weeks. Now with the new EXP curve, I didn't even feel like I was breaking a sweat on AB to get 13 days for this 250. Obviously, she's kind of cheating because she does abuse all of these bonus event stats for EXP and Aron Link super well as being able to pretty much full clear on par with the greats like Mechanic and Zero for map clear. So she is one of the better mobbers, especially with one-shotting Soul Seekers. But holy moly, dude. I think my longest day on AB was 11 hours. Like, I didn't even break 8 hours of training most days, and I was still able to chuck this one into 250 in under 2 weeks. This new EXP curve is so easy. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be doing like sub 2-week 250s till the end of time. That's just way too much maple. It was like the perfect blend of things for AB. Relatively brainless mobbing, as well as just getting naturally good EXP rates, which made me want to train more, so they just compounded off of each other. Also a very, very easy class to watch anything on a second monitor, because if your Soul Seekers are one-shotting, about the only thing you have to pay attention to is how many combo orbs you see, so that you're not losing out on that EXP. It's very, very relaxing and nice. The only problem is this class is directly proportionate to the amount of funding you put in for your mobbing ease. Obviously, flash jumping around with Celestial Roar isn't the hardest thing in the universe, but it is significantly more effort than just chucking out Soul Seekers for 6 hours. So there's a little bit of a barrier to these OP EXP rates. On the bossing side of things, I touched on it before, I really don't like Mighty Mascot. I don't. It does potentially do a lot of damage. It's something like 400 plus damage lines if you fully charge this thing up, and if none of them miss the boss, which is, holy moly, that's a lot of hits for a single skill. But the charge up feels really awkward. I don't like it. I wish instead of having to attack to charge the skill, it would just naturally charge up over its duration, so that you can just pop the skill before you set up for your full burst and then just wait. How it works right now, you have to like prepare it and keep hitting the boss to charge it up, so you can't really use this while being safe and waiting for a burst. You kind of just have to burst and then charge this while you're bursting, which feels bad because by the time it's fully charged, your terms and conditions are going to fall off, and that's a big part of your burst damage. So it's awkward to use, but when it does work, holy moly does it work. And loaded dice is super nice for anything bossing related. Instead of locking in a 6, lock in a 5, bonus damage. Who doesn't want that? I do have some minor problems with AB, primarily around Trinity and Dream Defender. I don't know what it is about Trinity and Dream Defender that just butt heads, but how it's supposed to work. Most bossing skills in this game should prioritize the mob or boss with the most amount of health in the map when everything spawns. For whatever reason, Trinity does not follow that logic. So when you're pushing Dream Defender floors and you need Trinity to hit the box, Trinity's gonna be just hitting the mobs one at a time, slowly whittling through them until it finally connects with the box, which is horrendous. Because Trinity is a skill that you have to constantly be tapping the key to get it to combo into the more powerful parts of the attack. Having it only use the first attack over and over and over again because it's not hitting the box, it's hitting the much weaker mobs surrounding the box, is very, very detrimental. I hope this is only a problem to Dream Defender, because this would be beyond fucking obnoxious for like Dark Knell or something where there's a lot of mobs around the boss normally. So I'm hoping it's only a problem with Dream Defender, but with Dream Defender, it's a big fucking problem. It's infuriating to work around. It's so bad. But Angelic Buster, she's a really good class. Honestly, totally not biased because she's the channel mascot or nothing. Totally not biased, but AV is a very good class, both unfunded and funded. She has one of the best kits for mobbing unfunded, with your Celestial Roar, Soul Resonance, Supreme Supernova, your Spotlights. your 0 cooldown rope lift. Don't get me started on how life-changingly nice that is. AB has a very, very beginner-friendly kit. The biggest problem with her for beginners is her very abysmally low crit chance. Like, it is very bad, to the point that I had to spec 19 points, I believe, into my Legion crit here. 18 points, sorry, but that is far more crit rate than I usually have. I generally only have 10%, and that's usually baseline good enough for every class, but AB needed Phantom Link, she needed BT Link, she needed 18 Legion crit. Holy moly, I was praying to get a crit rate line on my inner ability before I got attack speed so that I could start taking some of those sources of crit rate off, because as nice as they are, they're not the most efficient for damage. But that's really the only barrier to entry AB has. And crit rate has a lot of sources that you can get. You've got Night Lord and Marksman for your Legion card bonuses. You have crit rate on the board itself. You've got Phantom Link, Beast Tamer Link, Explorer Archer Link. Crit rate isn't really as inhibiting of a requirement as it once was. So I really don't have any negatives for beginners testing out AB. I would highly, highly recommend this class because she is good unfunded. She might feel a bit clunky unfunded with Trinity and whatnot, but that's something you can get used to while you're playing it. And this class really only gets better with funding. Like I was saying, once your Soul Seekers start one-shotting, your mobbing just goes from good to better the more funding you put in. It's not like most classes where once your main mobbing skill is one-shotting, that's your best rates. Nah, AB just has an even better mobbing skill waiting in the wings for once you finally have the damage to make use of it. It's super, super good. And the more funding that you have in the character, the less effort you have to put in to get good rates. It's a win-win. So for AB, I'd highly, highly recommend it. I would also highly recommend turning off the voice lines. Because if you're farming with Soul Seekers, she has literally 2 voice lines for Soul Seekers. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to only give her 2 lines and then to make her say those lines every time she uses the attack, but psychological damage is the drawback to playing Angelic Buster. But if you want to avoid that, just turn off the voice lines. Trust me, you ain't missing much. Oh boy. Now, a lot of you guys probably noticed I didn't do pretty much any streaming beyond 241 for this. My router kind of died on me, so I'm playing with some dial-up tier upload speeds currently, which almost any class besides Angelic Buster probably wouldn't have even been doable. The amount of input delay I have currently is unbearable. I'm surprised I made it through the video without like breaking down and getting angry about it, because it is like a significant 1 second delay on a lot of these things. I'm getting a new router soon, so I can come back to streaming and doing stuff then, but holy moly. Thank God I was playing AB when my router finally died, because pretty much anyone else I would have just not been playing the game. I wouldn't have been able to do it. AB was just that perfect character with that little amount of effort and not super high on the ping reliance to get good mobbing rates. A solid 10 out of 10 class and the best mascot you could ask for. But I don't think I'm done with the Novas yet. I had fun with AB, but she was very, very fast, so I didn't get the greatest feel for the Nova classes. Plus, that 0 cooldown rope lift is something, I tell ya. I think the next character we're going to be doing is also going to have a 0 cooldown rope lift. But that's been Angelic Buster. If you have any questions about AB, about my journey to all classes 250, or about playing MapleStory in general, feel free to ask down below. I love talking about this game, and I make it a point to answer any and all questions you guys might have. Besides like the will you do X class questions, because of course I'll do X class. That's part of all classes. But anyways, until next time, happy mapling.